Okay, let's get this shit started. As you could probably guess from what you see on your screen, we're going to be talking about the skull today. Now, I have mentioned previously, I mentioned on last week's show that I was going to do proportions of the different ages and that I had information about that. I'm still working on that. And like I said in a live stream last week, there may not actually be anything there. The more I'm looking into it, the more I'm finding that there just may not be enough material on that subject to justify an entire video. But there is definitely enough material on the skull to justify an entire video. So we're going to do something about that. We're going to have a look at all of this. But before I get started on that, as you can see, I want to mention, first of all, most of the pictures that I'm using in this particular video come from boneclones.com, and this site sells high-quality educational models of human bones. Because you can't buy real human bones, and because you can't buy real human bones, you have to get resin replicas, and Bone Clones makes really good resin replicas. They're used by medical schools, they're used by doctors, they're used by dentists, and all kinds of people use these things, and they're very high-quality professional things. I don't personally own any of their products because, holy shit, if you look at their website, they're expensive. Also, what the fuck would I do with it? Where would I put them? I don't have any place to... I mean, you know, there's this crazy part of me that's like, I want all of this stuff. It's so cool. And then there's another part of me that goes, you fucking moron. What would you even do with it? It's just crap that would take up space in your house. Yeah, that's what would happen. But I had this conversation... Actually, I had a few conversations. I had a short conversation with bum number one at the end of my live stream last week, where he said or she said, I don't know who this person is. It's a YouTube user. Yeah, I don't know their pronouns. They could be anything. I don't fucking know. But they suggested using photo reference. And I said, it kind of defeats the purpose of learning to work without reference. And we had a short little conversation about that. And the thing is, I do use reference. I just don't really use it when I sketch. I use reference to do studies. For example, when I did a study of Mimaru from .hack. And you can kind of see here when you look at this that I've got, you know, over on this side here, I've got all of this stuff that's just drawn over top of the reference to cover the basic shapes and what everything is, and this gives me some general idea of what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and then I split the various pieces out off to the side so I can take a closer look at that and go, okay, this is what a final picture looks like. Let me do a sketch over top of that. Let me do some composition over that, and then let me split that off so I can see what that looks like without the reference image, and then pull the sketch out from underneath of it so I don't have the red skeleton, I just have the blue composition. I do this when I'm working on studies. I don't do this when I'm sketching. And the reason I don't do this when I'm sketching is my entire problem is, if you'll recall, I was showing this picture that I did a couple years ago, and I was going over everything that's wrong with it. And the entire reason that all of this stuff is wrong is I tried to shortcut to the end of the process without going through the intermediate steps. I didn't do a construction on this image. I didn't do a sketch. I didn't do any thumbnails. I didn't work on the proportions. I just kind of fucked around and faked it as I went. And it came out really fucked up. And it's because of that I go and I do these studies and I go, okay, here's what the construction underneath of this picture would look like. here's what the construction underneath it would look like. Here's what the composition on top of that would look like. Here's the pose and how that would read. And I do all of that work in a study, but I don't actually do it in my sketch. And that's the same kind of thing that we're going to work on here today with like the skulls, is that we're going to work with some photographic reference, and then the photographic reference is going to go out the door, and I'm going to work on just some sketches. And I'm going to give you an assignment as usual, and then in the live stream on Saturday at 11 p.m. Pacific, I'm going to spend an hour sketching, and I'm not going to have photographic reference. And I'm going to do the same assignment that I give you, because that's kind of the point. But anyway, back to the conversations that I had. I had another conversation about the video game Elite Dangerous. You've probably seen that the first video on my channel this time through, this is like the third or fourth time I've rebooted my channel. The first video on my channel this time around is about the unbridled excitement of playing Elite Dangerous. And it's like 45 minutes of traveling through empty space compressed into about 15 minutes. And the entire point is, it's not exciting. This is like 90% of the game is just fucking around traveling through empty space. And if you don't think that's fun, and if you're not going to enjoy that, then the game's going to suck. I think the game's a fucking blast, but they just did a DLC update for, they have an expansion called the Odyssey. And the Odyssey expansion has made a lot of people very angry. People are angry because they're like, there's not enough content. The expansion costs too much. But one of the problems a lot of people seem to have is when they try to play with their friends, the game crashes. So they can't play with their friends. They have to play by themselves, and that's not fun for them, and they're pissing and moaning about that. Now, there's also an issue with... there's something or other that they can't find, some kind of like documents that you're supposed to look for to unlock something, and they don't spawn into the game, so you can't find them, so you can never unlock that thing, and people are pissing and moaning about that. And I'm sitting here scratching my head, and I'm going, if you can't find the last document to unlock the last thing a month after the game was updated, I don't think the complaint about there's not enough stuff holds water. There's stuff here. You're pillaging the game for everything you can. And you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to just play the game and not like look up everything on a website. And somebody decided to piss and moan at me about that specifically, and they said, the game isn't fun once you've found everything there is to find. And I said, well, yeah, but you can't find everything there is to find. It's impossible to find everything there is to find. The only way that you found it is because you looked it up on a website. You looked it up in a database. You took a shortcut from the beginning to the end of the process, and now you're complaining that the process didn't take long enough. Well, that's your own stupid fucking fault that you did that. The game didn't make you do that. It's not the developer's fault that you did that. And his response to this was, the game is too big and you would never find anything if you had to do it all by yourself. This is the same guy that was just complaining there's not enough content in the game. There's not enough content in the game once you find everything. Yeah, but you took a shortcut. I had to take a shortcut. I would never have found everything. Make up your fucking mind. This is so much. It's the same goddamn thing. A couple of years ago, I was having a conversation with people about the game Stellaris. And they were saying the only way to win the game is to play as fanatic xenophobe machine empires. And I'm like, I have never played as a fanatic xenophobe machine empire. And they're like, well, you probably lose a lot when you play against other people. I don't play against other people. I play against the computer. Well, the computer's AI is shit. Probably if you're playing as a fanatic xenophobe machine empire, which is known to be overpowered. And people are upset because you can make stupid choices and bad decisions that make the game no fun. They take the challenge out of the game, and they make it impossible for you to enjoy yourself. And I'm like, I go into the game and I have a thing that I do every single time, which is I tell the game to assign me a random empire. Just pick a random empire from the various default empires that are available. All of the pre-generated empires, all of the races and formations of society that are already generated and already set up. Just pick one of those and give it to me and I'll play that. Now, I don't win the game every single time because frequently I'll be handed something and I'll just go, what the fuck is this? I don't even know how to play this. But I have problems to solve every single time, and they're brand new problems because it's a new galaxy. There are new star systems around me. There are new empires nearby. I have to deal with new diplomacy. Things unfold entirely differently. And it's different every time. And then you have these people that always play a fanatic xenophobe machine empire, and their strategy is always to build up their army as fast as possible, race off and conquer their neighbors as quickly as they can, and then they're just unstoppable and they can just steamroller the entire galaxy. Yeah, you've solved this problem. Go find a different one that you haven't solved yet and solve that one. That's what games like this are about. Grand strategy is not about doing the same thing every time because you know it works. And all of these conversations have something in common. And the thing they have in common is that I'm trying to tell people who do not seem to understand the concept, it's not about getting where you're going. It's about knowing how to get there. And that's like, I mean, I know how to draw skulls. I'm reasonably good at drawing skulls, in fact, because I understand how skulls are constructed. And you can see right here that you've got this, you've got what they call the, what is it? The cranial vault, which is this big area. And you'll recall we talked about when I said you're not supposed to measure with heads. We talked about cranial units that are an attempt to solve this. You start with that circle up at the top, and from that circle, you divide it in half. And you'll notice as I go through and I divide these circles in half, that halfway point tends to go right across the top of the brow. Now, it doesn't go right across the top of the brow on this European skull down here, because that skull is tilted and angled downward. Now, once you've got this diameter there, and the Asian male here is also angled upward, so it doesn't come across the eye sockets there. But once you've got that, you just turn it into a square, and you have the full shape of the skull. And now you go back to the Andrew Loomis method, and the Andrew Loomis method says, now you chop off the sides. You chop off the sides, you angle your jawbone inward, and that construction method works every time. And if you're working from that construction method, okay, if you use that construction method, then what you can do is you can turn off all of this, and you can just go, okay, let's have a new layer, and let's make this a blue one, okay? We'll make this a blue layer. Okay, and you could draw that circle, and you could draw that line, and you could draw that square, like so, okay? And once you've done that, you know This is roughly the shape of the skull. You can chop off the sides, you can angle it downward, and this gives you roughly an idea of what the skull is going to be. Yeah. They erase some of these construction lines around the side here. This is roughly the shape of a skull. Okay? Let's add a new layer and we'll drag that down and let me see. Can I change this to paper? Can I make a paper layer? Raster layer, vector layer, layer folder. I right click here and make a new layer. Paper. There we go. And I want this to have a value of 39. Okay. There we go. So now we got our paper there. Throw that away, because that was me trying to make some paper. But now we've got this. Now, this is where our eye sockets go, right here. Okay? And with this being where our eye sockets go, we can draw another line here. Let me make that smaller. There. We can draw another line there, and we can go, that's the bottom of the nose. So we know that's the bottom of the nose. So right about in the middle, right there, we can put the nose. That's not exactly the middle. Now, we know here are where the eye sockets go, right here. Okay? Right underneath of the brow ridge. So there are the eye sockets. And we know that immediately under the eye sockets we have cheekbones. Those reach up around like this. Here's the vault of the skull. Those cheekbones around here. Now we've got the maxilla. It comes down like so. And we're going to have our various teeth here. We've got teeth are kind of a solved problem. Now here's the mandible. Here's the chin. Here's the mandible again. And here is the here's the bottom part of that, and this is where your teeth are going to sit. Now, I don't need photographic reference to do this because I've drawn skulls so goddamn many times that I don't even need the construction lines, okay? I just automatically know this is where all of the stuff goes, and I can make a skull that reads reasonably well, and I can even do it off in a 3/4 perspective. It's relatively simple to do because I've drawn 8 million skulls. I know all of the bits and pieces of a skull. I know how it all fits together. I can do this over and over again. They're not photorealistic, but I'm not going for photorealistic. But because I've drawn a whole buttload of these, I don't need to go through all of that stuff. And it looks like I have not needed to do any construction at all. That I just kind of automatically knew everything fits together like this. And you might look at that and go, oh man, I will never be able to just whip something out like that. Sure you will, but first you have to do all of the work and all of the study of drawing them over and over and over again and having this kind of iconic thing, you know. And really what it comes down to, there are 3 phases to getting anything that you draw to look right, which is first you have to know what lines to draw. You know you need to draw eye sockets. You know you need to draw a nose. You know you need a mandible. You need a cheekbone. You need the supraorbital ridge, and then you need the zygomatic arch along the side. You need the maxilla. You need the mandible. You need all of those bits and pieces go together, and you need to do your teeth. And I'm not really doing the teeth because I don't want to go into that much detail on these. And then there's the cranial vault in the back. That's really all you need. And you have a skull that looks like a skull. Okay? And once you know what those lines are, all you have to know is where exactly to draw them. You can block this out and stylize it. And yeah, it's distorted, but It's intentionally distorted. That's style. That's what stylized means, is that you've intentionally distorted it. You know how you're distorting it. But once you know what lines to draw and where those lines go and how to draw them, your next concern is, why do they go there? Why they go there is what your photographic reference is for. Your photographic reference shows you we have that shape to the eyes. It's a rhombic shape, okay? You can see that it's kind of a trapezoid that's tilted over on its side. And you can also see that regardless of whether we're working with an Asian skull or a European skull or an African skull, the eye sockets are about the same shape. Even though there's some minor variation, they're all about the same shape. The nasal cavities are about the same shape. They have this kind of inverted heart thing going on, okay? And you can see the major difference is that where the nasal ridge ends up being. You see that the bone of the nose comes down lower on African and Asian skulls. You see that it's up a bit higher on the European skulls. It comes up almost right between the eyes, whereas it's under the eyes in these other two. Now, I believe but cannot prove that this is why Europeans have more sinus problems. But it's the same basic idea, okay? All of this fits together in about the same way. All of these skulls have the same basic shape. And once you really look at a bunch of skulls and you go, I understand what the shape of the skull is and why the skull is shaped that way. Once you understand, here's your supraorbital ridge right here. Here's this ridge that runs along the side of the skull right here. It's kind of a corner. And you get this plane change here. That plane change matters when you go in to shade it. Okay, and you can see that's where the shading is on your photographic reference. And all of these different skulls show you all of this stuff. Now, what you can't see in here is you can't see the zygomatic arch, because the zygomatic arch kind of comes along on the side. Okay, but the entire point here is you use the photographic reference to learn why the lines go where they go. You can see all of the different bits and pieces, but photographic reference really doesn't help you decide what should get a line? What needs a line? Do you need this shape here, which is how a lot of people will draw it? Do you need to do it like that? Some people do it that way. Do you need to draw this brow here? Do you need to draw all the way across, or do you draw two separate bits? I generally do two separate bits, and I carry it all the way around. I don't usually draw this ridge. I just keep it nice and smooth because that's the style that I go for. But technically, that ridge is there. That's an intentional distortion that's stylistic. But let's go and take a look at some profiles, because there's some other stuff that I looked at here. And you can see what we've got here is on the top, we've got African, Asian, European female. On the bottom, we've got African, Asian, European male. I've got more pictures from bone clones, and I've done some averaging. As you can see here, we've got African on this bit, and we've got Asian on this bit, we've got European on this bit. There's male here, there's female here, female on the top, male in the middle, and now we've got both on the bottom. Because what I've done is I laid them over top of each other, and I made the top one semi-transparent, so they're kind of blurred together. And then as we come over here, if we come all the way over here, this is all three skulls of the females blended together. This is all three male skulls blended together. And down here, you've got all of the skulls blended together. And you can see that you've got this iconic universal shape to the skull. You've still got the circle and the square. It's just that now the square is offset forward. And then you connect that. And this square actually represents where the nose ends up as well, okay? And another thing I want to point out here is that because we're looking at photographic reference, okay? Because we're looking at photographic reference, we can confirm something. Everybody thinks that anime characters have these hideously distorted features, but Here's Usumi from Mayochiki, okay? And this is blown up tremendously, so it's kind of shit quality. But if I switch over to this layer and I lower down the opacity, look where this face sits on the, look where this sits on the skull. See, here's the skull, and you can see when you make it opaque, there is the ear at the tip of the mandible. Oh, let's not do that. There's the ear at the tip of the mandible. There's the ear. And let's jack that back up and let's take a look. Let's go, here's the edge of the mandible. Here's where her mouth is. Here's where her nose is. Here's where her eyes are. And let's take a look at where that ends up actually on the skull when we lower the opacity down. Lower the opacity on the right layer. And lower the opacity down. Look, the nose is right where it belongs. The mouth is right where it belongs. The mandible is right where it belongs. The ear right where it belongs. The major change that you've got is the eye is pushed up and it's massively enlarged. It's a seriously enlarged eye here, because the eye would really sit right about here. This is about where the eye would sit, right in this area here. That's where a realistic eye would sit. But for the anime character, all you actually have is you have this highly exaggerated eye. And that highly exaggerated eye, when you look at the rest of this, okay, you can see here's the edge of the skull, but with our anime girl here, that's not the edge of her skull. They've pushed the skull up and back to make room for the eye. They've enlarged the cranial vault to match the eye. Okay? Everything else is right where it belongs. The face still has the right proportions. All you've got is these big eyes and the enlarged cranial vault, which in turn makes almost all anime characters look like children. But the features are not that distorted. The proportions aren't distorted. Once you actually get that out of the way, the ear is right where it should be. The mandible right where it should be. The mouth where it should be. The nose where it should be. The only thing that's out of place is the eye. They've made the face a little bit smaller because there's a concept in Asia of small face, which is a mark of beauty. Okay? And that's the important takeaway from this is anime doesn't really distort that much. It distorts a little, but really not that much. Everybody thinks it's like hideously distorted, and it is not. Okay? But all of this stuff, all of these like side views of the skull and whatnot, these are to teach you the basic construction methods. You got halfway, and now you just take that down the other half, take that out the other half. You complete that. And that's basically how this fits together. Now you just round this off and you know that this comes in. There's a little bit of an inward pull. And you've just got this kind of zigzagging structure here. And then this area right here, right at the corner of the mandible, that's where your ear goes, right there. This is about where your hairline is on most people, okay? Right here. It's if you draw a line about 30 to 45 degrees up, that's where your hairline is. And the hair would extend back from there. And all of these things are things that you can pick up from photographic reference, and you can look at pictures and whatnot, and you can pick stuff up. But using the photographic reference to figure that stuff out is fine. The problem is, if you use photographic reference all the time, then you never actually learn how to draw the full-blown shapes. Here will be your eye socket right there. Here will be your nose. Here's your supraorbital ridge. There's the zygomatic arch. That's where the mandible comes in. And that's about how that fits together. Actually, that would be down a little lower. Because what happens there is that fits in there. As this swings open, as the mandible swings open, this part comes up underneath of there. Okay? It's what they call the temporomandibular joint, because this is your temple, and this right here is the temporal plate of the skull. So that's the temporomandibular joint, and a lot of people have a thing where their mandible clicks in and out of place, okay? So as that opens, it fits up underneath it there. That's an arch. If you look at it from above, okay, there's a little loop, and you've got one bit of the mandible that fits into the loop, and you've got another bit that sits outside of it, and there's a pivot that just kind of goes back and forth on this, okay? So if you're trying to draw like a skull with its mouth open, then you know that comes together kind of like that. Now, I'm still not a great artist. I'm not claiming to be a great artist, but I do understand how to draw a skull. Just pretty much off the cuff. Because I've done a lot of it. Got a skateboard over there. But that's basically how all of this fits together. And these run together. Then you've got the cheekbone here. The cheekbone runs up underneath of that. And you could stylize this in all kinds of ways. Okay? But once you actually go off and you start doing your sketches, you start going, okay, I'm going to draw a skull, and you can get really stylized with this. You can get very stylized, and you can do stuff like you can put an iris and a pupil in the eye socket so it looks like it's looking at you, even though that makes absolutely no fucking sense. Okay? That is not how eyes work. And you can really kind of dramatically pull out those cheekbones. You can make them sharp as hell. You can make your teeth really sharp. You can do all kinds of cool shit here. You can swoop that up and around. Let me erase that and do a shitty job because I didn't bother making my brush any bigger, which I should have. But you just sweep that back, and then you've got your mandible, which comes down and swoops over, and you can stylize this, and you can make it look really cool. And then people look at that and go, "Wow, man, you did a really good job on that." It's not photorealistic, okay? But it's one of those things where when you've done it like 8,000 times, you can be as stylistic as you want. You can put eyes in the sockets, even though that's not even remotely sensible. You could draw the orbital ridges in particularly stylized fashions. You can draw the skull itself in all kinds of stylized ways. You can put all of this together, and you learn little things like the teeth lie on top of one another. So it's like each bit of a tooth is behind the last tooth. And as they go farther back, they overlap more and more. So you get that kind of thing going on there. And you can learn where all of your plane changes are, and you learn where all of the interesting parts end up being. And then you come down over here, and you've got your mandible, and you know that when you do the mandible, the bottom teeth here, okay? The bottom teeth are smaller, which means that the canines on the bottom are nesting on the inside of the canines on the top. And this is just kind of me fucking around. This isn't even me trying to do a great job here. And I don't do a great job, okay? But this kind of stylized thing, this kind of stylized format, this is the kind of thing that I've done a whole lot of over the years. And it's the kind of thing that if I were to say I could do something well, this would be what I'd say is likely it. Because I can refine this and I can make it into an illustration that looks pretty good, you know? It's just that this is not the stuff that I want to draw, okay? And that's the main thing that I want you to think about on this is when you look at this, you go, okay, hey, you know, that's not a bad job, but I need to go through the construction method. I need to go through the steps of the process, because what I have done over the years is I have repeatedly skipped these steps because they are boring and I don't want to do them. And because I have skipped these steps over and over again, I am missing various fundamental skills that I need to be able to draw more realistic things. Like, actually, let's pull that out. If I wanted to do an actual face, okay, this is where the eyebrows go, right here. The eyebrows sit over top of the supraorbital ridge, and then underneath of that, you would have actual eyes. And the face is literally 5 eyes across. So right here, you see that I've drawn this eyebrow too far over. Sometimes it's easier to see this if you flip the canvas. You flip the canvas and it makes things look messed up, like happens here. It's like, this looks fine to me. This does not look fine to me. This looks very much not fine to me. And that's because your brain is fucked up in some way or another. It's not symmetrical. Part of your brain doesn't work at the exact same speed on the exact same side. So that tells me something's wrong with this side, and I need to fix that. So I can do that in all kinds of different ways. I'm not going to do it right now. But it's if I was trying to do something that was a little bit more realistic, which I'm not good at, because I don't do these kind of more realistic studies, you know, because I don't do all of the construction, because I don't fit all of this stuff together, because I don't do the work that goes into it, okay? I'm not good at this. I can't do this very well. And I've got a certain amount of talent with this because, you know, everybody always told me I was good at art and that I should spend more time on art. This doesn't actually look that bad. But this is not something that I do especially well on. And because it's not something I do especially well on, I avoid it and I do the things that I'm good at. You have to concentrate on the stuff you're not good at. It's like these eyes. You know, yeah, you could tell these are supposed to be eyes, but these eyes suck. Okay. And what I need to work on is doing the steps that go into the beginning of this, doing the steps that go into the actual construction of something. So that leads us to the exercise for this week, which you know, is something that you're going to be working on over the course of the week, and something that I'm going to be working on for about an hour when it gets around to Saturday night. Take something that you know how to draw reasonably well, and draw it from memory. Do the thing where you just like go immediately to, oh, I know how to draw cars, so I'm just going to go ahead and draw the car. And having drawn the car, you know, yay, I've got a car that I just drew, okay? But after you draw something that you know how to draw from memory, okay, look at it and go through and find all the construction points. Find all of the things that you should have sketched out. Draw out, like, the perspective lines. Draw out the construction. Find the individual smaller shapes within it. Find bounding boxes. Find the simplified shapes in there. Now, if you can't draw a particular thing very well from scratch, find reference, find pictures and grab them and do this kind of thing. Do this sort of fitting the skeleton and the composition in around that. Find the simple shapes within it. And I've got a whole bunch of stuff that I can do this with that I'll do on Saturday. And holy crap, this is a 40-minute video. But yeah, that's the thing is I went directly to the finished work on this, and I was not good enough to go straight to the finished work. And I fucked up a bunch of stuff. And that's why I have to do this stuff. I have to do this construction. Now, maybe you don't have to. Maybe you don't want to. Maybe that's not the kind of thing you want to do. I'm not the boss of you. Okay, if you find my videos entertaining, that's good enough. If you find them instructive, that's definitely good enough. You don't have to do anything, you know. Whatever you want to take away from this is, you know, it's up to you. And you can take away like everything I tell you, or you can take away just the stuff that you think is useful, and that's fine. You should have all of the instructors that are valuable to you all at once, and YouTube is a great way to do that. And actually, there was a guy I was watching earlier today. There's a channel called Love Life Drawing, and he's got a bunch of stuff on there. And it's partially through watching his channel that I was going, everybody assumes that you're going to be drawing from reference or that you're going to be drawing from life. And because of that assumption, they teach you things that aren't going to work when you're not. And his channel is one of the things that I was looking at and going, that's a thing that people really do. But he actually did something about different methods of construction. There's one about proportions and lines, and there's one about basic shapes. And you can see that I'm doing kind of a hybrid of both, where I work with proportions, but I also work with breaking things down into basic shapes. And I need to look up that video. I will put a link to it up in the little cards here once I actually find it. I should be able to find it in my history relatively quickly, so that shouldn't take too long once I get this thing started. And yeah, other than that, you know, that's basically it. The assignment is draw something or find something you wish you could draw, and draw something you can draw well, or find something that is drawn well that you wish you could draw well if you can't draw anything well, or if you don't particularly want to study what you draw well. I'm not the boss. If you do whatever, and you know, put the basic shapes in there, put the bounding boxes, figure out the construction. How would you construct this if you were starting from scratch? And give that some thought. And I'll be doing that this Saturday night at 11 p.m. Pacific for about an hour, and the way things have been going, maybe even longer. And yeah, that's it for today, and I'll see you then, and okay, bye.